So I just finished watching a video by John the Other in which he talks about the fact that as a white male, especially if you engage in any kind of public discourse, you're likely to have insults leveled at you of being racist, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, etc. And that these things are done in an attempt to stifle you, to silence you, to discredit you from your input into the conversation. To derail, really, any kind of meaningful dialogue, which might involve things like, good arguments, rationality, and how you should respond to those insults. And for sure, one of the things that he says is you should not make any apologies. You should not try to explain your way out of that basket that they've put you in, because doing so sort of gives them more fuel. You should literally reject those people out of hand. And I would agree with that. I think we subconsciously we give messages, signals to people how we will be treated, how we will accept being treated. And I think the moment you start getting apologetic, or the moment you start trying to explain your way out of that situation, you're letting people know actually at that point that you're vulnerable. And besides, for many of these accusations, there generally is no good defense. As the old saying goes, I think it's about rape allegations. I could be wrong. But it can really be applicable to any of these things, sexism, racism, etc., that there's no good defense for those things, not even innocence. In other words, even if you're innocent, the fact that someone is tarring you with that brush has an impact, even if you're completely innocent of the charges. So the thing to do is to reject those charges. And I would suggest a couple of things. One, I will say, this is one of the things I admire about Donald Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm an armchair anarchist, so I don't really believe in the whole political system. But one thing I do think is interesting to watch is how he responds to criticism. And he literally just rejects it outright. That's not to say that I don't think he can be open to good reasoned arguments put forth in a respectful manner. And regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, every human being has the right to some basic respect, given that they haven't done something to completely destroy that right for themselves. And if you're going to expect someone to take you seriously, you're going to have to approach them on those terms. And he definitely lets people know how he will accept being treated, just by the way he carries himself. Not to mention the way he responds to those things. Another person who I actually admire in these terms, and he may not respond fairly in all cases with this retort. I haven't seen every case. However, the cases that I have seen, I think it's a good response. And that is Stefan Molyneux. In his comments section, there will often be people responding emotionally to his video. They'll be trying to make some sort of an ad hominem, talking about him as a person, talking about how things appear to him or how it seems like, etc., etc. And he responds with a 3-word sentence, not an argument. And I think that's definitely a good way to respond as well. Just let people know that you acknowledge publicly that what they're saying does not constitute an argument. I would go a little bit further even than just when people are making accusations in an effort to stifle you in discussion. And that is to actually just take ownership of who you are. And I don't think a person necessarily should be proud of being a white male or a black woman or a minority woman of color, etc., etc. Those things are all accidents of birth. There's no real virtue in that. I would say have pride in the things that make up you and who you are, that exemplify some chosen virtue on your part. An adherence to rationality and empiricism and virtue, I think those things are virtuous in and of their own accord, and I think a person could have pride in that. Have pride in the way you treat people. Have pride in the way you've raised your kids. Have pride in the way that you do your work in whatever your line of work, your occupation is. But I don't think you should let anyone tear down who you are based on the fact that you are white male or any other intersection of race and gender and all these other metrics, social metrics that human beings have mistakenly devised to categorize people. It's not really mistaken, it's just observation. But some people have taken that, wrapped it up in an ideological framework, and built a bunch of narratives surrounding it, and that's where the problem lies, of course. I watched a video, and I've made a video on this, and I haven't really uploaded it yet. At least I don't think I have, because I got a ton of videos I haven't uploaded, in which there's a guy who's doing some filming at some kind of a protest or demonstration. And he's in a public place. He's got his iPhone. He's just holding it up. He's just recording. In a public space, there's nothing wrong with that. You're mistaken if you don't think you're under the watchful eye of some camera somewhere if you're in a city anymore, in the West anyway. And that's all he's doing. He's just recording. And I'm sure the same people who get all excited because someone's recording them would say otherwise, if their situation were reversed, hey, if you've got nothing to hide, why are you worried about being filmed, right? But they take it as an offense. The people have a hard time with consistency and universalizing principles. So the safe space thing is a good example of that, right? We got to have our safe spaces. But then when you want to have an event, a conservative event, let's say some speakers are coming in, like, I don't know, Milo Yiannopoulos and Christine Hoff Sommers and Stephen Crowder, well, we're going to deny your right to have a space. And then we're going to say that what we're doing is free speech when we interrupt you. In any case, no consistency is the point that I'm trying to make there. So this guy's just filming at this event, and so people come up and they try to stop him, and they do this typical passive-aggressive, really aggressive passive-aggressive thing of, like, you know, forming barricades with bodies and then just pretending not to, but marching forward, just shimmying forward and putting force against someone. Again, no consistency. If that person were to push back, you would see the accusations be leveled, and they would want to charge with assault, and they would make the accusations of assault. And at one point, a middle-aged woman comes up to him and starts talking about how he's surrounded by his privilege. She's now filming him too. I'm filming you back. As though, okay, so what? Film me back. Just don't invade my space. I mean, he's got no more right to suggest that she shouldn't. And again, where's the consistency? If what he's doing is wrong, then you doing it back to him is a little inconsistent, right? I'm sure if he was actually in violation of something, there would be other ways to deal with that. But he isn't. And that's why they have to respond with this passive-aggressive behavior. She starts talking about how he's surrounded. I can see your white privilege, your male privilege all around you here. She says it with this weird grin, like, I got you. You think I don't know, but I know that you have all this privilege. She's smiling because she knows it's kind of a trump card for her. It's similar to a video that I watched with Karen Strawn. She was giving a lecture somewhere, and a guy got up and he said, listen, I got a boy in, I don't know, grade 2 or grade 3 or something like that, and he was on a mound, a play hill or something, and a girl who was younger than him in grade 1 or grade 2 or something came and pushed him and said, I'm a girl, you can't hit me back. And that's what this middle-aged woman is doing. She's leveling these accusations at him that she thinks are unassailable, and she also knows deep down that despite her claims that he has all the privilege, he is restricted in what he can do back to her. And she knows this. She knows, I think, deep down probably that that's really a mark of privilege. But again, the consistency is not a strong suit with some of these people. She goes further as he tries to engage with her to say, I have nothing to say to you until you acknowledge your privilege and are actively engaged in dismantling it. And this is something I've seen recently. There seems to be a bit of a shift in just initially identifying such things as intersectional oppression, right? The intersections of race and gender and other metrics that can sometimes compound someone's experienced oppression in our world. And I can appreciate the foundation behind that. The basic idea behind intersectionality, I get. The problem is assuming that you can somehow project that forward and make assessments on any given person based on that framework without finding out who that person is in the first place. And what's actionable about that. What does that actually mean? Then they've progressed it forward to say, well, we're going to identify the intersections of privilege. So we're going to identify the intersections of oppression, and now we're going to identify the intersections of privilege. Then they've moved it forward to say you should dismantle your privilege. The problem is that what's been deemed to be privileged by these people are things that we should all enjoy as free citizens. They'll have a privilege checklist, and they'll talk about different things, such as your opinion is taken somewhat as valid. You don't have to walk out of the house feeling self-conscious about your gender or your sexual orientation. You've never had to come out of the closet. You've never faced any religious persecution for your sexual orientation, etc., etc., etc. If you look down the privilege checklist, these tend to be things that we should all enjoy. So why anyone would think that someone with privilege would actively engage themselves in dismantling it is beyond me. And it destroys what they claim they're there for. In other words, they would claim that they're there to raise awareness and to hopefully engage people in accepting some sort of allyship with people of the more oppressed intersections of our experience, right? That they would like you to engage in helping people who are traditionally oppressed gain the privileges that you happen to enjoy. So the way not to do that is to get all up in someone's face and assert that they should dismantle their own privileges. Of course, this is why people think that feminists and social justice people, warriors as they're pejoratively called nowadays, hate men or hate white people or hate white men. Specifically, there's one particular intersection that that it's okay to hate on. They're all about multiculturalism, of course, but not multiculturalism of ideas. And even within multiculturalism, they'll give you a list to choose from as to the multiculturalism, the intersections that are acceptable. But my response to that, actively engaged in dismantling your privilege, is hell no. Sorry. You can't have my privilege. I mean, that is to say, I would actually help you gain the level of privilege that I enjoy if we can actually assess and all that, and it is empirical and it's rational, because a lot of it isn't. But if it is, that's my goal, is to have everybody enjoy the same level of privilege. That's rational. And then we can go off a merit-based system from that point. But you're not going to get me to dismantle mine. You can't have it. And I think anybody who suggests that anyone else should actively be engaged in dismantling their privilege is hateful of that person, probably based on arbitrary metrics, probably don't know anything about the individual themselves, and is completely disingenuous. Because the goal should be to rise all ships, not to drain the reservoir and sink all ships. I don't see any reason to accept the idea that this is some kind of a zero-sum game, that for someone to gain dignity and respect, it must come at the expense of someone else's. That's not how this works. And I think the time has come not to be apologetic for accidents of birth any more than another person should feel that it's just and legitimate that they be marginalized for accidents of birth. It's how someone behaves, the virtue of their character, that should make the difference here. And I think that, I think that a person should respond with, that's not an argument, or, yeah, so what? Or, as John said, sit down and shut up. When having these accusations leveled at them that don't constitute an argument are unfounded and just mere assertions. Thanks for watching.
You've never experienced oppression in your entire fucking life. Neither have I.
You don't know me.
You're fucking a white male.
Are you capable of making a logical argument?
I don't even know what that means.